Welcome to the NBA Slate Breakdown. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Brent Hyden. 12 games tonight, or 11 if you're playing on FanDuel. They had a overnight slate. They took the 7 o'clock game off. I know your feelings are pretty strong on that.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it somewhat clean today on the podcast, but I already called FanDuel a bunch of dumbasses for doing that, and I've I've continued my social media attack on FanDuel with that tweet, and then another one that we'll talk about a little bit later with some of their injury stuff. But interesting 12-game slate and a laundry list of injuries to talk about.
Yeah, which as expected on a 12-game slate. Let's start with this Toronto Charlotte game for the DK folks, where that is still on the main slate. Kyle Lowry, obviously a guy that I know you're interested in. He's featured in your GPP article tonight.
Yeah, first off, I would expect that FanDuel probably rolls out some crappy like early slate where it's like this game and then the rest of the 7:30 games in an attempt to just collect more rakes. So you will probably get to play this game on FanDuel at some point, but I do actually really like Kyle Lowry. I talked about it in the GPP article, but Charlotte really does struggle to defend point guards this season. It's a good spot for Lowry, who went off against this team last time out for 36 points, like 5 or 6 rebounds, and like 5 assists. Usage rate is kind of down this season. It's kind of ceded a lot of the usage to DeMar DeRozan, who is also in a decent spot. But I really like him. I think given his price of 8,200 on DraftKings and oh wait, I can't look on FanDuel. Whatever it is on FanDuel, I think this is a good spot for him, and he'll definitely go overlooked because there's a lot of guys like Kemba Walker, who's a little cheaper, Chris Paul, and some of these other plays. I think we're going to see a 40, 50 fantasy point outing out of him, and that's solid for that price.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind Lowry. The ownership that you've been getting on him this season's been really solid in comparison to some of these other guys. And you mentioned the usage rate. Yeah, it's been low. We've obviously seen that, but his peripheral stats have obviously been something that's always been in his favor where, he can score just maybe 12 or 13 real points, but can still put up 40 plus.
Yeah, and I did kind of allude to this in my GPP article, but part of his biggest issue this season has been his shooting. Like he's had some really, really down shooting games, but over his last two, he's back up over like 44, 45%. And Charlotte's allowing opponents to shoot or point guards to shoot like 43% from the floor and 37% from three. So you would expect that trend to continue. And if he's going to come out and get, 16, 18, maybe 20 real points, and then the rest of those peripherals, I think he's in line for an excellent outing.
Yep, I'm with you. Do you have any interest in anyone else on Toronto?
I do like DeMar DeRozan. I think contrary to what people say, he does have upside, especially in this spot. So I do like him a little bit. I think people are going to be scared off by Nicholas Batum defense, but like Batum hasn't been like he hasn't been great this season on defense, and I think also you have to consider the rotation. Like he's actually not playing a bunch of minutes with that first unit. Like he's coming off the bench with the second unit or running the second unit as the point guard a lot of times. So you're not necessarily going to see him matched up against DeRozan all the time. So I think you could look there. Other than that, I'm not really that interested in anyone else from the Toronto side of things.
And I think this game is going to get overlooked actually partially because FanDuel left it off the slate. Like you're going to see a lot of content providers. You're going to see a lot of people kind of just ignore this game because they're too lazy to look at it on the DK side.
Yeah, and you might even get like people that just like don't even realize that this game is happening because they do look at FanDuel first and then they go to DraftKings and just kind of overlook the game. Like I had to actually when I built my projections last night, I had to import like the overnight slate so that I could just get the stats for the salaries and stuff for these guys. So FanDuel replied to me. So I had to do that manually. So that might happen.
Yeah, for sure. On the Charlotte side, you did mention Kemba Walker, Batum. I mean, do you have an interest here?
I really do like Batum. I'm off Kemba Walker right now. Like generally, I do like him in these types of matchups because I think he'll go overlooked. And historically, he hasn't been terrible against the Raptors. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I do remember a couple times, specifically last season, that I wrote him up in this matchup and he performed pretty well. That price is really low. Toronto's defense is really, really good, but some of those defensive numbers are bolstered by their second unit defense, who's like one of the best in the NBA. But you can go there. I think he's still a little bothered by that wrist injury, so that does concern me. But I would rather go with Batum over Walk here. I think Batum is just way, way too cheap for the upside that he has, because he does give you the points and their peripherals as well. So Batum's a guy that I really like in GPPs as kind of like a price pivot off of some of the other chalky options.
Certainly. Front court, guys like Michael Kidd Gilchrist, Frank Kaminsky's popped up every now and then. Any interest here?
Frank Kaminsky is not going to have another career game tonight. Just don't chase it. Like you're chasing, like he went off against the same Toronto team last time out. Like I'm still not chasing it. Like I don't want anything to do with Kaminsky. I will gladly take my L all over social media if he goes off tonight. But like you can look at Dwight. I think it's a good spot for him. I think there's better options to target though.
Sacramento, Brooklyn next year as we break into the FanDuel main slate. Sacramento obviously dealt with some injuries last night. We saw George Hill sit out. We saw De'Aaron Fox leave the game. Once again, it's just kind of a rotating point guard situation. I know you and I are both not really high on here with the Frank Mason and Fox and these types of guys.
Okay, first things first, George Hill has strep throat. He said he's feeling better and he's going to give it a go tonight. I don't really want anything to do with a player like that has strep throat trying to play in a fast-paced game like this. Like, Brooklyn's going to push the pace. I don't know about everyone else in the world, but when I get strep throat, like I don't get out of bed. Like I struggle to freaking walk to the bathroom with strep throat. Like I feel that terrible. So just imagine trying to run up and down the court when you're already like old. Like George Hill's over 30, if I recall correctly. He's battled like injuries all season long, and now this. Like I don't want anything to do with any of that. De'Aaron Fox, for whatever reason, Sacramento decided that they wanted to try to trot him out last game, even though he couldn't jump and he was coming off like a quad contusion. I don't put it past them to try to run him out again tonight because they're a bunch of morons and just terrible organization. But realistically speaking, he should not play. That should open up minutes for Frank Mason, but surprisingly enough, he played fewer minutes in the second half last night than he did in the first half, and De'Aaron Fox didn't play the entire second half. Like they rode Jackson, they rode Malachi Richardson. Like Mason's still probably going to play 22, 24 minutes. He's going to be mega chalk, and you can go ahead and eat that in cash games. But in GPPs, I think you can easily pivot off of him to a few other guys, and one of them on this team who I think is a much better play, and that's Buddy Hield.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of interest for guys that don't carry a ton of high usage out of those guys that you mentioned outside of Hield. The minutes just have kind of been, nothing really cranking over 25 for those guys. And if we get the case where we see Jackson and kind of sneak into these backup roles, like there just isn't enough upside, not in a 12-game slate. Like I'm going to be looking for more upside.
Yeah, like Mason, you mentioned upside. Like I just don't see him having a bunch of upside. Like comes out and gets you 22, 24, 25 fantasy points, which at his price, that's fine. But like, if that happens and you fade him, you're not sitting there wanting to hang yourself at the end of the night because, he broke the slate. So I think Buddy Hield is the better option. We've seen with George Hill on the floor, or with George Hill healthy and without De'Aaron Fox and some of these other guys, like 27% usage rate, went off last night. If Willie Cauley-Stein starts again, like all the usage on that second unit without Cauley-Stein and without Bogdanovich goes to Buddy Hield, and he's just gonna shoot and shoot and shoot, and like I don't want to fade him in this spot.
I'm with you. And with the Kings front court, I mean, you mentioned Cauley-Stein, Zach Randolph, and some pretty good spots here. Randolph's price is just it's high, but I mean, performed last night pretty well. But I just think on a 12-game slate, like I'm going to go other directions.
I don't mind going there. I think he's a decent cash game play just because like the points you need for him to pay off that salary in cash is a little bit lower. And he talked after last night's game how good he was feeling. It's a decent spot for him. I do kind of like going there in cash. Cauley-Stein's fine. It's again a great matchup for either one of these guys. I would prefer if Cauley Stein actually came off the bench if you wanted to play him, because I think he has a higher usage rate and he's a much better player off the bench.
Anyone else from Sacramento there?
Keep an eye, like if anything comes out. Malachi Richardson got a decent amount of run. He's minimum salary. Dave Yeager, I tweeted out an article by Jason Jones from the Sacramento Bee, I believe. Dave Yeager was preaching about how awesome his defense, Malachi Richardson's defense, was last night against Ben Simmons. He's a guy you could see. He's a guy that you could see get some extra run.
On the Brooklyn side of things here, I kind of feel like some of these guys are a little too expensive. The ones that I do have some interest in, like Hollis Jefferson or Dinwiddie here, like I'm not too thrilled with Brooklyn tonight, even though they're in a good spot.
I think you look at Dinwiddie. I think he's an excellent option regardless of price, just because of the matchup. They really don't have anyone that can defend him unless they roll out Malachi Richardson. But again, we see just upside out the wazoo for Dinwiddie whenever he's at home. Like, he's a guy that actually has home road splits this season. Talking to all you Kemba Walker home road split stands out there. But 36 fantasy points per game at home, 19.8 away for Spencer Dinwiddie. He's a guy that you can consider. I wrote up Rondé Hollis Jefferson, much better on DraftKings because his price is much cheaper there, but just an absolutely amazing spot for him. And we've seen the upside out of him against the Knicks in a terrible, terrible matchup. He put up almost 50 fantasy points. So I do really like this spot for Rondé Hollis Jefferson.
It's definitely a better price over on DraftKings. Obviously, we don't have any kind of questionable guys outside of obviously Russell and Lynn who are out. But, before, like we were looking at kind of Joe Harris, Allen Crabbe, Carroll, Levert, like now fully healthy squad, we're kind of back to just limited minutes and limited upside.
Yeah, and now you toss in like Nick Stauskas in there, and so he's getting minutes. Like, you can take a shot on like Crabbe or Carroll if you want to. Both guys could get hot. Both guys are fairly cheap, but I'm not really looking to target any of those players.
Front court, I don't have any interest in here for Brooklyn either.
No, Tyler Zeller would probably be the cheap option. Like, at center, he's 3,500 on DraftKings. He's cheap on FanDuel. Like, he'd be the guy that I would look at. 3,600 on FanDuel. So, like, you're not going to see Jahlil Okafor get any run. Like, Atkinson came out yesterday, I believe it was, and said that he needed, like, Jahlil Okafor needed to get in shape and get used to their system before he got any extended run. So he might get in for a couple minutes, but you're not going to see a bunch of minutes from him.
No. Indiana, Atlanta here next, 214 total. This is on par with Minnesota, Denver, on par with Phoenix and LA, and I think it's going to go overlooked here.
I think so too, and it's kind of interesting because there's a lot of really excellent options here. I guess pretty much in the front court for both teams, because the back court for most teams, because the front court's kind of jumbled up.
Yeah, we start with this Indiana side. Obviously, Victor Oladipo has just been leading the way. I mean, huge game against Boston. He's kind of that next smaller price tier down from James Harden, and he's 400 difference on DK. I think that's an interesting one from Butler. Like, between those two, and I think Butler's going to carry the higher ownership.
Yeah, I don't want to fade Victor Oladipo in this spot. We know how bad Atlanta's defense is. They're giving up. Got to scroll through my notes here, but they're giving up 108.7 points per game. They really, really, really struggle to defend the 3-point line. Opponents are shooting 38% on above the break threes, 41% on corner threes. Oladipo has been the best pull-up three-point shooter in the NBA this season. He's been better than Steph Curry on pull-up three-pointers. Like, that's been one of the biggest improvements in his game. And he's hitting a ton of his mid-range attempts as well. I would expect him to just go bananas here. And we've seen the fact, like, against Boston, like, he's matchup proof. Like, no one's stopping this guy right now. So I get 9,200 on DraftKings and 96 on FanDuel in a great matchup that you expect to be close. Like, it's a great spot to get exposure to him over someone like Chris Paul or James Harden, who while in great matchups, may not play as many minutes.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think my next guy that I will be taking a look at on Indiana is Miles Turner tonight in tournaments. Good spot for him against this Atlanta front court. He's flashed some upside here of late, but still a lower floor than I would like at his price. At 6,600 on DK, like I am going to be looking to sway in tournaments.
I don't actually think I can go there, and I'm pulling it up right now. Let me see. Yeah, against the Celtics, he did not close out that game. Like he left with 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter and didn't come back. I don't know if he's healthy. Like I have some concerns. Like he just hasn't looked right. If you want to take a shot in GPPs, go for it. But I think Sabonis might actually be the play here over Miles Turner. He's cheaper. It's still a great matchup. I think he might be the best option here. And the Hawks do struggle to defend the roll man and pick and rolls, and we know that's kind of like how Sabonis was doing his work earlier in the season. So I think I would rather go with Sabonis over Turner here.
That's interesting. I mean, I know Turner had the thigh issue. I think coming into that Boston game was where it happened. I mean, I guess it's something to keep an eye on. Sabonis would be interesting if he does get extended run here because played 29 minutes last game and put up nearly 30 fantasy points.
Yeah, I like him a lot, and I think this is a great spot for Thaddeus Young too.
Yeah, definitely don't mind Thad. Any interest in Collison at all?
Yes, I wrote him up in my GPP article. Just a great spot for him. He's a guy that I think is going to be a core play for me. He's been frustrating, I know, but in the spots where we've kind of attacked like teams that can't really defend spot up shooters, it's kind of where he's been really good against Brooklyn, against the Knicks, against Toronto. Some of these matchups, like he's been really good in them. And as I mentioned in my article, like the Hawks can't defend pick and roll ball handlers. They can't defend spot up shooters. They struggle to defend in isolation. And that's three areas where Collison is extremely good. And also he attempts like 10% of his 3-point attempts are corner threes. So that's a spot where he can kind of pick and choose his shots tonight. I think we see an upside game out of him.
Any interest in the bench guys? Corey Joseph, Lance Stevenson here?
I'll never say no to Lance Stevenson. It is a decent spot for him, and his price is still pretty low.
On the Atlanta side here, obviously we've seen Schroeder lead the team in usage. He's a guy who's playing pretty heavy minutes of late. His price is 7,300. It's not a bad one here, I think, on DK for tournaments.
Yeah, he's fine in tournaments. Probably fine in cash too. But kind of at that price, like there's just a bunch of guys that I think are in better spots here. But yeah, you could definitely go there.
The Bazemore, Tarian Prince, the question here, we finally got a game where there's two of them have the upside at the same time.
I think both are in play in GPPs. I don't think you can really go there in cash. Kind of interesting, and I have to give Mike Gallagher credit for bringing this up. The Hawks actually used Bazemore at the 4 a little bit last game, and that's really interesting if he's going to be matched up against Thaddeus Young. So I do kind of like Bazemore in GPPs a little more than Prince, but both these guys are decent GPP options.
You have interest in the front court here? I mean, Ilyasova, Collins.
I'm so tilted about Collins. Like, I got so mad because Budenholzer came out and said, like, John Collins is on a little bit of a minutes limit, but it's not far off from what his normal minutes would be. And then he plays them 17 freaking minutes. Like, come on, Budenholzer. Don't do this. Don't do me like that. Go for it in GPPs. Just take a shot. Like we've seen him have like massive double 40 fantasy point upside in matchups like this. So yeah, definitely take a shot in GPPs.
Yeah, I think he's the only one that I really have any interest in because it's other guys. I mean, you'll see Ilyasova get some run. You'll see Miles Plumlee get some run. I don't really have any interest here.
Yeah, I don't really either.
Miami, Boston next. Boston favored by 8, 201 over under. Miami still dealing with the injuries, obviously in the front court with Hassan Whiteside, James Johnson, Justice Winslow doubtful again. That just makes him pretty limited and also sets up some revenge games here for Jordan Mickey and Kelly Olynyk.
Yeah, and Goran Dragic is also now doubtful. So that probably means he's going to play 44 minutes tonight. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, what did he play last game? 40 minutes last time, 27 fantasy points. If he becomes super chalky, I'm not really going to be looking to be on him.
Wait, who are you talking about? I was talking about Goran Dragic.
Yeah, doubtful. What Tyler? Oh, you're talking. Oh, I was talking about Tyler Johnson.
I mean, I guess we can go there. I was making a joke about how bad the injury reporting has been, but I guess where do we want to start? We want to start with the revenge game narrative first.
Yeah, let's talk Old Nick. Let's talk Mickey here.
Hey Mickey, you're so fine. You're so fine. You blow my mind. Hey Mickey. Yeah, I'm going back to Jordan Mickey. Excellent game last time out. Got in a little bit of foul trouble early on, but against the Boston Celtics, it is a revenge game in Boston for both him and Olynyk. You can use both of them if you want. Like, we know that front court is really, really thin. They have 3 players. Bam Adebayo is in a decent spot too, but I think I'd just rather ride the narrative with both those guys.
They're the two that I have the most interest in. Like, I'm off kind of Josh Richardson tonight. I'm not really looking to be using the backcourt either in this spot, although I know some people, obviously, with their limited rotation, they're going to have to score. But I just think if like Tyler Johnson and Waiters become super popular, like I'm going to be looking other directions.
Yeah, I could definitely get behind a fade of all those 3 guys. They're all 3 going to play a bunch of minutes. They're all 3 going to take a bunch of shots, and they're all fine options. But like, Richardson's price increase kind of concerns me. It is a little bit tougher for him to pay off that salary, and this Boston defense is really, really, really freaking good. So if you want to eat the chalk and use any of those 3 guys, I wouldn't say no to it. But personally, I'm going to be looking elsewhere.
Yeah, like the minutes are high, but in my opinion, I just think the ceilings are a big capped in this matchup.
Yeah, I think if anyone has like out of any of the players that I think could probably come close to paying off their salary, it'd be Tyler Johnson. Like, going up against Kyrie, like, I think he'd be the guy. I mean, he shot 7 of 14, 0 of 5 from 3 last game. A couple of those threes fall in, and he has an excellent outing. I think he'd be the guy that I would go with just because he is the cheaper of the 3. He's not a trash can like Dion Waiters, and yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think if he kind of fits your lineup, like I'm still looking at, Isaiah Cannon as a guy, that cheap point card that I'm going to be tossing out a ton of tonight.
Yeah. Speaking of trash can, did you hear why Dion Waiters was sick last game?
No.
He ate too much spaghetti.
Oh, we've all been there.
he went the full Eminem route, the 8-mile route with mom's spaghetti.
Oh man, yeah, that's right. There's vomit on his sweater already.
Yeah. So I don't think we're gonna have an issue with him, puking before this game, but just keep an eye out on it. Like, if you get news that he's eating spaghetti pregame,
I don't know if there's a lot of good Italian places down by TD Garden, so I think he might be okay.
Well, I mean, maybe he packed his mom's spaghetti in a little Tupperware container and took it with him.
He could have. On the Celtics side of things here, I don't have a ton of interest in this side, although I do think Horford and Tatum are interesting front court guys just because Miami really has struggled defensively against bigs this year.
I think this is a really, really, really good spot for Al Horford, and I don't think anyone's going to go there tonight. Like, it is a slow-paced game, and there's a significant amount of blowout risk now that, superstar Goran Dragic probably isn't going to play, and you're relying on Dion Waiters to do the majority of your scoring. But I think this is a great spot for Al Horford. Great GPP option. Can't go there in cash. And I think the only other guy that I'm considering would be Kyrie, just as a cash game option. But again, not a guy that I think has a ton of upside here.
Yeah, I mean, I like Lowry a little bit more. There's some cheaper options in that range. I'm with you. So I think Kyrie, like, if you're building multiple lamps, I mean, if you want to get some exposure, I don't hate it, but yeah, I think Horford, especially 7,300 on DK, I think he's an interesting play here, especially given his peripheral numbers this season and the fact that he has shown the upside.
Yeah, it's a great spot for him, so don't shy away from using him.
Yeah, guys like Smart, Brown, I don't really have any interest in here tonight.
I don't really see a reason to go there.
Orlando, Chicago. This one's a good one because Super Mario here. We get to talk about with you.
Yeah, I'm just gonna.
We've found someone to rival Waiters though. Like Waiters was really lonely, and then we brought in Mario to bring him some company.
I hate that Mario is a thing. Like I just hate it, and unfortunately, he's gonna be chalk, and it's gonna be really hard to fade him. Um, Even though he is going up against the unbeatables right now.
Yeah, we're looking at the '96 Bulls here, playing some good basketball. I don't mind them. I do think you can still make a case of fade in GPPs though, if he is going to be obviously super popular. I just once again I still have more kind of interest in the surrounding players. Like I don't care some of these price tags for Orlando. Like I really like Jonathan Simmons again here tonight, even at a higher price tag. Vucevic has just been on fire lately. Like even at a higher price tag, like I'm still going to get some shares in GPPs, but I think I'm going to go a little bit cheaper in cash games.
Yeah, I think both are excellent options. Are two guys that I would heavily consider in the spot. I think I do like Vucevic a little more than Simmons, but we're talking two guys with just a ton of usage. Without you're missing Gordon, you're missing Fournier, you're missing Ross. Afflalo is probably not going to play, so you're talking two guys with like a crap ton of usage rate. So definitely like those guys. Vucevic with those injured players on the floor, 1.65 fantasy points per minute. He could just absolutely go bananas tonight. And I don't know that his ownership is going to be terribly high.
I think a lot of people are scared to pay the price tag.
I can see that. Like, I mean, I don't necessarily know if I would be able to fit that in my lineups, but I mean, we're talking a guy that's been over 50 fantasy points in 1, 2, 3 of his last four of his last five of his last six of his last 10. Like, that's a ton of upside, and it's a good matchup. So I don't necessarily mind going there tonight.
Yep. Any interest in Peyton? Mets have been kind of a little bit up and down. His production hasn't really been that great of late.
Nah, Elf is on the shelf for me.
Nice, I knew it. Anyone else here? It's been pretty heavy relying on the starters. I mean, we've seen Augustine pick up some minutes, but I don't have a ton of interest in him.
Nah, like we've seen Augustine and Shelvin Mack pick up extra minutes, and I can't, not tonight.
No. On the Chicago side, we see Mirotic really just kind of laughing, and even with Markkanen back, we saw the upside still be there because one, I mean, the usage rate is high. I still think even if he plays 25 minutes here, which he should, like he still has that potential.
Yeah, he still has a ton of upside, even if he plays limited minutes. And they're actually still kind of relying on him. Like we saw some lineups with him and Markkanen at the 4 and the 5. We saw some Portis, Mirotic, and Markkanen lineups. Like even if he only plays 24, 26 minutes, he's still averaging like 1.29 fantasy points per minute, shooting the lights out right now. Like you can still use him even at an elevated price tag. He still just has a ton of potential against a Magic team that is just really, really, really bad on defense.
Yeah, and I even think, I mean, Portis is still in play at his price. Like I think Markkanen's kind of the odd man out because they just don't see the upside in comparison to the other two.
Yeah, I think you could look there. Like I think Markkanen's just gonna continue to have limited minutes. Like I would be shocked if he played more. Like what did he play? 26 last game. 25.3. So I would imagine that he sits kind of around that mark. I guess if you want to take a shot on him in GPPs, go for it. Played 28 minutes against Orlando last time out, put up almost 30 fantasy points, 5,100 on FanDuel. That's a pretty good return on that, and no one's going to play him tonight. They're going to look at Mirotic over him. So in GPPs, Markkanen's fine. Portis is a good option. Mirotic is a good option, but the holiday season is here, and I am all about some Justin Holiday in this matchup. He's a guy that I absolutely love at his price tonight.
Yeah, I like the Chicago backcourt. I mean, Orlando bottom 5 in defensive efficiency against both point guards and shooting guards this year. I like him and Dunn are guys that I could use. Dunn, the price tag on DK 7,200, obviously a little bit pricey. Same with FanDuel, but I mean, he just continues to perform. And I know he hasn't shown crazy upside, but still a ceiling of 40, 45 fantasy points isn't out of his realm.
Yeah, you can look at Dunn. As I mentioned, Holiday, it's a great spot for him. David Nwaba's in a good spot. Like all three of those guys, I think are excellent options tonight. And pretty much all formats. Like I don't really care about Dunn's salary. Like I think he can easily get value for you, and he has a bunch of upside. Like we've seen the 40 plus fantasy point games. So if uh if you want to use all three, if you wanted to stack them, like you could do that, and it would probably be profitable.
Yep, for sure. Lakers Houston next year, 226 over under. This is obviously going to be a game where I think a lot of people are going to be drawing their interest in. We'll start with this Lakers side. We got the news that, obviously KCP is going to be out tonight. A little run in with the law. He can't leave California. Brooke Lopez out for a few weeks. That kind of opens the door for some of these front court guys. And I think obviously Kuzma and Randall are guys that I have a lot of interest in here.
Yeah, I wrote up Randall as an excellent option. I don't know what's going to happen here. Like I don't think they ended up calling Zubac up. Like I think Walton actually said that he didn't want to call Zubac. I don't think he wanted to call Zubac up. So that takes one player out of the front court mess. That still leaves like Andrew Bogut and Thomas Bryant as guys that could play at the center position, but I do expect them to go small here, and like Nance and Randall could play the majority of their minutes at the five. I think Randall still comes off the bench, and if he's coming off the bench, like I think he is just an insanely good GPP option here, because he's gonna avoid some of the Clint Capella and things like that. So I think he's a great option. You mentioned Kuzma. I think Kuzma's in a great spot. Uh, Nance in a great spot as well. Like I think all three of these guys are in play. I think I would rank them Randall, Kuzma, Nance based on price and upside.
Yep, I would agree there. Uh, Backcourt, I don't have a lot of interest in Lonzo Ball here tonight. He's been playing well. I mean, averaging 39 fantasy points over his last 5 games. I mean, he's been great. I think he struggles a little bit here tonight.
I think so too, and you would expect him to be matched up with Chris Paul for the majority of the game, and like I just don't really want any part of that. I mean, he's been playing really well recently, and he's actually been talking about how like he just feels more comfortable with his shot and is feeling more comfortable pushing the ball. If you want to go for it in GPPs, like you expect this game to be high scoring. I don't know that the Lakers can stay with the Rockets, but stranger things have happened. So, like, if you want to go for it in GPPs, you could.
Yeah. I mean, GPPs, I don't think you can roll them out. I do have interest in Brandon Ingram here tonight. I mean, the minutes continue to be high, continues to put up, possible 40 plus fantasy point games. I mean, he's done that in 3 of the last 5. He did that, came close 38 against Houston last time out. I just think if you need a safe play, I think Ingram's given us to that this year.
Yeah, I agree there. And one area that Houston does kind of struggle on defense right now is their transition defense, and Ingram is outstanding in transition. He's third best on the team behind Nance and KCP. So like he's a guy that you could really look at here. And I think he's probably going to be one of the lesser owned options on the slate.
Yep. And with KCP out, I mean, we saw Josh Hart, play 20 minutes, 32 minutes, against Cleveland. Was a fantasy points per minute guy, dropped a double-double. Like, I still think Jordan Clarkson overall is the better option here, but Hart is bare min. Like, I'm not going to ignore that.
Yeah, like he's in cash games, like you can just plug him in and move on both sides. Like I think FanDuel, he's 3,900. DraftKings, he's 3K. I'm planting my flag right now. I'm only playing one lineup in cash and GPPs tonight, and I'm fading Josh Hart. Like I realize he had a big game that came on the back of like 10 rebounds against Cleveland. Like Houston is a great rebounding team. They're one of the better rebounding teams in the NBA. I am not buying into this Josh Hart hype. If he goes off, I will again take my L, but I think he has like 20 to 22 fantasy point upside tonight, and like I don't care if I fade that in cash and GPP. Like I'm not going to get burned by a guy scoring 20 fantasy points.
Yeah, I think Clarkson's going to be the guy for me because he's had a couple of bad shooting games here over the last few, and I still see this type of game where the Lakers are going to have to be playing catch up, and we know Clarkson can come off the bench and just chuck up a ton of shots at a high usage. And at his price, like especially at shooting guard, I think he does have a ton of upside, especially if you want to game stack this one. I think Clarkson is going to be an important part of this one, possibly staying close.
Yeah, and he's a great leverage play off of like Hart. Like if Clarkson just smashes value, like if Clarkson comes out and puts up 40 fantasy points and Josh Hart only puts up like 18, everyone played Josh Hart and 2% of people played Clarkson. Those people are going to be happy, and all the Josh Hart chalk eaters are going to be sad.
Houston, obviously, let's start with this front court here. I mean, Chris Paul, James Harden have just been phenomenal. Over 50 fantasy points averaging for each of them over the last five. You know, obviously, Paul's minutes have been relatively high at 34 over the last five. So, like, he's back. He's been back for a while. I don't know why I'm saying he's back. But both Paul, Harden, I mean, I have no issue with building around them tonight.
Yeah, I think both are excellent options. Like we know that they're still going to get minutes, even if they blow the Lakers out. Like, I mean, against Utah, it was like 120-99 ended up being like Harden played 38 minutes. Like these guys are still playing a ton of minutes, even in blowout games. And I like Chris Paul a little bit more just because he's cheaper. We know he has like 50, 55 fantasy point upside. James Harden, likely expected outcome of maybe like 58, 65 points. Like I don't see him coming out and putting up like an 80, fantasy point game and breaking the slate. So I would take like the $1,200 discount on Chris Paul here on DraftKings. Like both of these guys, great options. Wouldn't say no to either one. Clint Capella is extremely interesting too. I'm a little afraid that if the Lakers go really small, that Clint Capella sees fewer minutes. But even if he only plays like 22 minutes, that's like he could put up like 35, 40 fantasy points in 22 minutes against the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, he played 22 minutes last time out and got 31 fantasy points. Like, huge upside here. Definitely going to get some exposure. I still like DeAndre Jordan a little bit in that same price range.
Yeah, I think Jordan's probably the guy I feel a little bit more comfortable in. But I mean, we saw what last game, or was that Monday's game, where Clint Capella just went bonkers against Utah, had 24 and 19 rebounds. So we know the upside is there. Definitely worth taking a shot in GPPs.
Yep. As far as the secondary guys, I mean, Gordon, Ariza, Anderson, do you have any interest here?
Anderson, no. I refuse to play Ryan Anderson anymore. Like the dude doesn't do anything except for like shoot, and he can't shoot right now. He has like one game over his last 10 where he has like a decent amount of rebounds, 2 games. Not really looking there. I think I would rather if the Lakers go small, you'll see Anderson and Tucker spend time at the 5. I would rather have Tucker over Anderson because he's cheaper. And like Ariza could spend some time at the 4. I would rather have Ariza over Anderson.
Yeah, I think if I'm going here, uh, I, I don't mind Ariza, but I just know, like, I don't think the upside's really that high. You just know he's going to play a ton of minutes. And that outcome where you think, like, he can get 30 plus in this matchup and he ends up only scoring 22, like, he's always such a letdown.
Yeah, it's just really tough to ignore a guy that's probably going to play like 40 minutes tonight.
Yeah. Gordon, did we touch on him?
Go for it if you want to. I'm not high on him. There's better options.
Utah OKC next year, 198 total, one of the lower ones on the slate. I don't really have a ton of interest in this game. I just think at OKC's prices, like they'll get the job done. I'm not really on anyone from this one at all.
I mean, I'll never say no to Russell Westbrook. If you want to use him, go for it. It's the same thing every freaking night. It doesn't matter what the matchup is. He's pretty much it for me from the OKC side. I mean, Carmelo Anthony's price is plummeted below 6K on FanDuel or on DraftKings. What is he on FanDuel? Probably like 10K. 6,400 on FanDuel. That's I know he's not the shot attempts aren't there, production isn't there, but that's really cheap. That's a really appealing price for Carmelo. he's gonna have a game where he just comes out and puts up like 50 fantasy points sometime soon. Probably doesn't happen tonight, but if you're building a bunch of lineups, I would have some exposure there. Other than that, like I don't really care that much about anyone else from the OKC side of this game.
On the Utah side, we do need to keep an eye on Favors and Mitchell. If Mitchell sits, I mean, obviously that does open up a lot of usage for everyone else and some more minutes for guys like Hood and Burks as well.
Yeah, Favors is interesting. Like I do have a little interest in Favors if Steven Adams sits and Favors plays, obviously. I do have a little bit of interest in him just because we know he's really, really good whenever Gobert is out and whenever he's kind of playing at the five. If Donovan Mitchell sits, like Rodney Hood gets a bunch of usage, but I think Alec Burks is the guy to look at if we don't get Donovan Mitchell playing. Unfortunately, we may not get that news before lock. So if you wanted to take a shot on Alec Burks at 4,300, I think you could. Not the greatest of matchups, but he averages like almost 20 fantasy points in 20 minutes against the Thunder this season. Almost 30% usage rate with no Mitchell on the floor, 1.14 fantasy points per minute. Like I don't mind using a little bit of Alec Burks here.
No, I think it just all kind of depends on how injuries shake up that makes this game somewhat appealing or just not appealing.
Yeah, I also don't think I think Thabo Sefolosha is a little bit intriguing here. We could see him get a few extra minutes just to kind of try to defend the length of OKC. So he's a guy that you could look at as kind of a cheap option, and it's a revenge game for Thabo. So it's like two teams removed, but it is a revenge game for Thabo Sefolosha.
Yeah, we saw Joe Johnson play some bigger minutes, but I don't think this is a spot. But I do think he is a name to kind of keep an eye on moving forward.
Yeah, I don't want anything to do with ISO Joe.
Detroit, Dallas, we kind of hit a little rough patch here. Detroit's this game, obviously, one of the lower total, slow pace. Like, I'm not terribly high on this one. I won't rule out Drummond and GPPs, though, just because it is a good spot for him if you're building a ton of lines. But I still prefer Vucevic, who's right in that same price or going cheaper.
Yeah, Drummond's an interesting option if you want to attack Dallas. The one guy that I do have a little bit of interest in, and this is kind of a price pivot off of the Chalk Josh Harts of the world. That's going to be Reggie Bullock, who has played 30 minutes in back-to-back games. We know Avery Bradley's out. I mean, he's been shooting really, really, really well. Let me see. I've got it here in my 40-something pages of notes. But see, he's coming off. He's got 4 straight starts. He's really excited, like, about the opportunity. He's averaging 12.8 points on 64.5% shooting in his 4 starts. He's made 9 of 15 3-pointers and has recorded 8 steals. If we're going to get Reggie Bullock playing 30 minutes against a team that struggles to defend the 3-point line, I do have a little bit of interest. I don't think you can use him in cash just because like he doesn't really have a floor. But in GPPs, he has 30 fantasy point upside.
Yeah, I mean, he was the only other guy. It was basically him and Drummond. I don't really have a lot of interest in anyone else here.
Tobias, maybe. And Reggie Jackson has a really high usage rate with no Avery Bradley, but I wrote about it on Saturday, I think it was. I don't think Reggie is healthy. Like I think that knee is giving him a lot of problems. So I don't really want to go there.
Yeah, his max in terms of minutes just seems to be about 28 minutes.
Yeah, you're not going to see him. Yeah, you're not going to see him play a bunch of minutes, and that really hurts his upside.
On the Dallas side, we still need to keep an eye on Dennis Smith, who's questionable, optimistically questionable for tonight's slate, which I know that's a term that you love.
He is actually going to play, and no, he is going to play. Like Dennis Smith Jr. will play versus Detroit tonight, per Rick Carlisle. Rick Carlisle hinted that Dennis Smith Jr. could be on a minute restriction coming back after 6 games off, but he didn't go into detail.
Oh. So, well, I mean, it's easy for me on a 12-game slate. Like, I'm not diving into the Dallas front court or back court. I think Harrison Barnes is the only one that I had interest in cash games because the minutes are still there, and we've also seen Detroit struggle against small forwards this season.
Yeah, it's just one of those things like you're just plugging in minutes for Harrison Barnes. Like there's really not a ton of upside. You have a safe floor just because the minutes, but we know that the Jim Carrey lookalike on the sideline for the Dallas Mavericks is probably going to troll us. So if you're dying to get exposure to this game, Maxi Kleber's a little bit interesting for a cheap option.
I love that. I've been past few games. It's just like people going Jordan Bell. Like Kleber's just the same thing. And he's got that potential upside too. Like we've seen him hit 8, 9x. Over the past few games, coming off back to back really fun games. The minutes have been there. Obviously, not a high usage guy, but I mean, it's not a bad spot for him. It's just kind of middle of the road here against Detroit.
Yeah, it's not a great spot, not a bad one. Like I mean, there's a clear path to get him getting like 25 fantasy points. So definitely worth a shot if you want to get a little bit of feminine care Maxi Kleber in your lineup.
Minnesota Denver here next. 216 over under. I like this game. Do need to keep an eye on some injuries on the Denver side. With Minnesota here, I'm going to be looking at Jimmy Butler quite a bit, and I think a little bit more on FanDuel because he's a little bit cheaper than Durant at the small forward position. I do think they kind of have similar outcomes tonight.
Yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say that Jimmy Butler is back to full health. I mean, what is he like? Over 50 fantasy points on 3 of his last 4. It's a good spot for him. I wouldn't say no to using him. I think in that same price range of guys, like especially at DraftKings, I would rather have Oladipo because DraftKings, for whatever ignorant reason, has him shooting guard only.
Yeah.
But yeah, like he's a fine play. Like I think you could definitely go there. Jeff Teague, this feels like a spot where Jeff Teague is just going to come out and just destroy everything, and everyone's going to be tilting because they have no exposure to him against Denver. Like I think he's a great option as well.
Yeah, I do too. Front court, I don't have a lot of interest in. I know Taj Gibson's still somewhat cheap, but he's been a little boomer bust lately for me at his price.
Yeah, I don't really want to go there tonight. Like let's see, what is he? 5,900. Like there's several power forward eligible players that we've already talked about that probably have much higher ceilings. And yeah, I'd rather go with them.
Any interest in Towns tonight?
No, because I expect Jokic to get the start, and I don't want anything to do with Karl-Anthony Towns against Jokic.
Yeah, I'm with you. I much prefer Vucevic there, Drummond in the price range. That sums it up for the Minnesota side. On the Denver side, I mean, Jokic was a guy who was kind of bounced in between minutes here, averaging 25 over his last 5. I mean, do we see him get back here up into the 30s?
I hope so, because it's a great spot for him. I mentioned I do think, depending on how news breaks, like if Gary Harris is out, like I don't really see a way that they cannot start Jokic because there's just no offense without Gary Harris on the floor. So if Harris sits, like I think Malone has to start Jokic. And if he starts, you're probably going to see him 28, 30, 32 minutes. And against Karl-Anthony Towns at like 8,100, I think he's right around the same price on FanDuel. It would be damn near impossible for him to not pay off his salary.
Yeah, I don't mind him. GPPs. Backcourt, obviously Moutier questionable here. Gary Harris questionable. Like that kind of limits to guys like it's basically going to be Barton and Murray.
Yeah, it was a little disappointing that Jamal Murray didn't get more minutes when Moutier sat last game. Again, it's Mike Malone, like we would expect. In theory, that Jamal Murray should get a bunch of minutes with no Moutier, and even more minutes if Gary Harris sits. That being said, I mean, if he's not hitting his shots, like Malone's just not going to play him. So he's a risky GPP option, but he has a very high ceiling here. Usage, it's only 40 minutes, but without Moutier and without Gary Harris, like he has a almost 40% usage rate. It's really freaking high. I do think you could go there. But my guy today, and he's my Josh Hart pivot, is going to be Mr. Torrey Craig, who has been just outstanding over the last couple games. He played 29 minutes against OKC, did a great job locking down Russell Westbrook at times. I think he is a significantly better option than Josh Hart because he actually does things other than rebound. Like he can score, he can get some boards, he can get some blocks and steals. Like he does all of the stuff that Mike Malone likes. So I think Torrey Craig is the clear pivot off of Josh Hart today.
Yeah, I don't mind him. You mentioned the peripheral stats. I mean, 3 blocks, 2 steals, over those 2 games. This is a guy who can shoot pretty well. Yeah, I don't mind him at 3,600 on DK.
Yeah, he's my dude today. Like my Josh Hart fade, I'm gonna ride and die with that, and Torrey Craig is gonna carry me to glory. I hope.
Anyone else in Denver you're looking at?
I do like Will Barton a lot, especially if Harris sits. Like I actually don't expect Harris to play. Like I'm probably going to be wrong because that's how NBA injuries have happened. But didn't practice yesterday. Talked about how like his elbow and his back and everything just really hurt. Barton would be interesting, and again, we can keep going to the well with Bay Lyles.
31% usage last game. The shot just wasn't dropping. Like he was only 2 of 15 from the field. If we get Trill Barton here at 30% usage again, I'm all for it.
Oh, for sure.
Moving on here, Spurs and Trailblazers, 198 over under. I don't have a ton of interest in this game. I know you're really not looking here either. Spurs side, I don't really like anyone.
If you want the LaMarcus Aldridge revenge, go for it. We do know that Kawhi Leonard is out. Tony Parker is out. Kyle Anderson is expected to be back, and so is Danny Green. This is a tough Portland defense. Like their defense is for real. I don't care what anyone says. I think we were both looking at it beforehand. I think Aldridge has had like one good game against Portland over the last 2 seasons. So if you're building a narrative street lineup, go for it with Aldridge. We know the usage is there, but there's just so many better spots to pick. Like it's a 12-game slate. Like I don't have to take a guy in a bad position and pray that he goes off.
Yeah, and because Kyle Anderson's out, and obviously we saw Kawhi, like it's just going to be him and Gay.
Well, Kyle Anderson's back. Kyle Anderson's probable.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Kawhi's out. Anderson's back.
Yeah.
If Anderson was out again, then Gay would become more playable.
Yeah, there's just neither one of these guys are not for me. Nope.
Yeah. On the Portland side, I know Lillard's a guy that you're taking a look at in GPPs just because, one, the ownership's going to be low with so many other guys in that range, and the usage rate in minutes just continue to be sky high.
I'm not just taking a look at him in GPPs. I am locking and loading him in all formats. This is a great spot for Lillard. Like the Trailblazers are not happy right now. They got just absolutely screwed over last game. They didn't have any free throw attempts in the second half of their last game. They are pissed. Terry Stotts is pissed. Damian Lillard is pissed. Everybody's pissed. It's going to be Damian Lillard just taking this game over and going ham against the Spurs. We know the Spurs have been abused by point guards at times this season. Lillard has abused them over the last 3 seasons. He has 46, 48, 38, 40, and 50 fantasy points against the Spurs. I am locking in Damian Lillard and moving on.
Alrighty then. I like it. Pushing the chips all in here.
All in.
Anyone else on Portland?
McCollum is really, really, really cheap. You can use him in GPPs. I think he's a great GPP option.
Yeah. Front court guys, I don't have a lot of interest in. Nurkic still not up as far as minutes go to where I want to see him. Look fine, but minutes wise, they're still not there.
Yeah, you can't really go there. Not tonight.
No. Memphis Golden State. This one I don't have a lot of interest in. Obviously Curry's still ruled out. Draymond Green still hasn't been practicing. He's questionable, but I don't expect him to play either. Durant, obviously we know what we're going to get out of him, but I think I'm just going to be spending elsewhere.
Yeah, he's a guy, if you're looking in cash games, you can build around him just because, the usage and all that stuff is there. Production has been insane recently with no Curry and with no KD. Solid option. Like I don't don't necessarily think you have to fade him, and you can probably use him and one other star just because of all the value that's out there. So you want to use him, go for it. It is not a great matchup, but we do know the Grizzlies defense is really, really bad because they're just a mash unit without like their only healthy player is like Tyreek Evans and Marc Gasol. Everyone else is banged up. So like I wouldn't say no to Kevin Durant.
No. And obviously, if Draymond Green sits, we've seen Caspi, we've seen Jordan Bell be great values. Like I'm still okay with using them, but on a full slate, like there's still other options. So where I'm not clearly making them a core focus play.
I prefer Caspi. I'm not gonna do the Jordan Bell stuff. Like it's just not a spot where I want to target him. Not at his like increased price. I would rather Caspi, who is he's more involved than Bell is.
Klay Thompson, he's too expensive for me. I just 7,200 on DK is a little bit high for just kind of getting 30 fantasy points.
Yeah, if you want to use him in cash because you feel like he's just gonna get you 30, go for it. But I'm not really looking there.
On the Memphis side, I mean, we've seen Memphis play Golden State pretty tough over the years, kind of in and out of whoever's been injured. I don't mind him tonight. If you're kind of looking that way, obviously, like you said, it's basically been about 3 usable guys here.
Yeah, I'm not worried about a blowout like I know a lot of people are, but for whatever reason, it doesn't matter who is on the court, who is off the court for Memphis. Like they take it to Golden State and they come out and play hard. And I don't know why. Maybe it's just like they want to try to beat the best. Like I think you could target some guys from Memphis here. I think Tyreek Evans, probably not a cash safe option because we've seen just him randomly just rest without like really any indication. This is a front end of a back-to-back. We already have Chandler Parsons ruled out for rest, even though they haven't played in 5 days. But this is a great spot for Tyreek Evans. Like I think he's a guy that you're going to get at really, really low ownership, and he has a massive ceiling here. So I don't mind him. Do have a little concern about Marc Gasol maybe getting played off the floor if Zaza doesn't play. But again, GPPs, he's fine. And I think JaMychal Green is usable in both formats. I think it's a great spot for him.
Yeah, I got a little beef with Marc Gasol just, dropping only 30 against Atlanta when I was all in and then 50 against Boston when I was off.
Yeah, I do. I do really hate that happened. I was tilting that, but I mean, against the Warriors, we saw last time out, 36 minutes, 60 fantasy points. Like, attempted 17 free throws in that game. That's insane. Like it is a good spot for him if he can stay on the court. Again, I do have a little concern that he gets played off if they don't really have a big to match up with him. But I mean, can't really deny that it's an excellent spot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind him. JaMychal Green is another one. I mean, his minutes are back and pretty steady.
Yeah, like I think he's the guy. Like if you're fading Tyreek or Gasol, like I think Evans is the guy, or Green is the guy. Sorry.
Phoenix LA next game here. Obviously, this is one where we get two kind of injury riddled teams. We got bad rotations on the Phoenix side. It's Lennon Cannon. I know the train is going to derail here soon, and like we're just going to get like really screwed one of these nights.
Yeah. I don't know what Jay Toronto is doing. Like I just don't. I don't know how he's going to handle his rotations on a nightly basis, but Isaiah Cannon has at least the last 2 games played a bunch of minutes. He's been outstanding. He dropped a giant cannonball on my lineups the last time I didn't use him. Darren Fox ruled out. Woohoo! But again, like 4,500 on DraftKings. I think he's even cheaper on FanDuel. Surprisingly enough, I think you can use him. Troy Daniels is another option you can target. I can't trust Mike James or Tyler Ulis. I can't trust either of those guys in the backcourt, and you're not looking at Jackson either.
No, you're not. I'm more looking really at Daniels and hoping that he can either get hot from three in tournaments. Obviously, Can's a guy that we've seen back-to-back 30-plus fantasy point games, and kind of contributing across the board. Like we've seen some peripheral numbers. The assists have been there, 13 over those two games. He got 3 steals last time out, and he was, less than 2% owned. Like I think that creeps up a little bit more tonight, given the fact that he now has 2 games to show. But still, I still think it's going to be really low owned.
Yeah, I think I know he's probably going to be, I guess, popular in terms of like he's probably going to have like 10, 12, 15% ownership. But I mean, I think he can still go there even in GPP. It's just because he does have like 35, 38 fantasy point ceiling.
Yeah. And kind of the same thing goes for like TJ Warren here. Like the upside really just hasn't been there for his price of late. Clearly kind of struggling without Booker.
Yeah, I think this is a spot where you can like attack though, just because the matchup is really good. He's still a double digit field goal attempts in like every single game. He just hasn't necessarily been getting the rebounds, but against a Clippers team with like no healthy bodies, like I think you can go there in GPPs, not cash viable though.
Front court here, obviously I'll roll the dice here on Len again. Like his price is up a little bit, but uh, minutes, I mean, he's played 28 minutes in back-to-back games. Like his fantasy points per minute have just been through the roof. That's kind of always been his case. It's just been the minutes.
Yeah, it's Lynn's sanity and Phoenix. I wrote him up today. I'm already having like I know like I'm gonna go to bed tonight and have nightmares of the Phoenix center rotation because it's gonna end up being like Tyson Chandler 26 minutes, Alex Lynn 6 minutes, and Greg Monroe like 22 or something. Um, but like you really can't deny the fact that he's just been going ham recently. Over 50 fantasy points against the Timberwolves, over 30 fantasy points in the other 2 games. Uh, Performed really well against this team last time out. Fouls haven't necessarily been a thing. Like I know he's been playing limited minutes, but like I don't think he has more than 3 fouls in any of his last 10 games. It is a good spot for him. Price is up there a little bit, but he definitely has like 15 and 15 upside here. I don't necessarily think he's a guy that you can overlook.
No, I don't think so either. He's really the only one that I'll take shots on. We've seen Monroe sit 3 of the last 4 games. Otherwise, Monroe's been a 30-plus fantasy point guy too in 3 of the last 4 games he's played. It's just, it's Len and that's it for me. I'm not taking the shots anywhere else.
Yeah, it's just that if he plays, I do want to wait and see. Like Tyson Chandler would be in a decent spot at his price. This is a road game. I think the reason, like Tyson Chandler, the personal stuff that's been going on might keep him from traveling with the team. Like I don't that I know why. I know what the personal stuff is. It's just really not relevant to daily fantasy. But if we find out that he didn't travel with the team, I think you can look at Monroe as another option because they don't really have anyone else.
Yep, certainly. Clipper side of things here, obviously we're got Lou Williams. He's probable tonight. A little bit of a fullback court, but I don't think that's obviously any issue given the fact that they're missing 2 of their small forwards and they're not going to want to use Sam Decker, it seems.
Yeah, I think you're still going to see like 35 minutes of Lou Williams. You're still going to get a bunch of minutes of Milos, and you're still going to get a bunch of minutes of Austin Rivers. All 3 guys viable here. We know you can attack Phoenix with pretty much every position. So Donovan Mitchell is now listed as out for tonight's game. So
hey,
we can
get some news early here.
woohoo! But yeah, all 3 of those Lakers or Clippers guards are in play. I think Lou Williams is my favorite just because we know the usage is there. I think that's probably where I would go first. But Milos is a really intriguing option at his price.
Yeah, I think Tudosic and Williams are my preferred 2 of the 3. Rivers, I don't mind him, I guess, if you're kind of making a bunch of lineups. But yeah, I like the backcourt here. I like DeAndre Jordan, 7,500. This is a guy who's been playing really well. Good spot for him tonight.
Yeah, he's a core option for me. I'm just plugging him in and moving on. We saw like if This is a really, really small sample size, but obviously we want to keep an eye on the Lou Williams news. If Lou Williams sits in 6 minutes without Lou Williams and without Beverly and without all these guys on the court, DeAndre Jordan, 1.92 fantasy points per minute. Again, small sample size alert, but even with Lou Williams, I mean, we're still talking like 98 minutes, 1.3 fantasy points per minute, 17% usage rate. Like, that's a sky high usage rate in DeAndre Jordan terms. Like, we're talking about a guy that's like normally 10%. So 17% usage, that's really high. Great matchup for him. Just a guy that, like I said, he's a core play for me. I'm kind of building around him and Oladipo and Lillard tonight.
Yeah, I like that. As far as other guys go there, I'm not really taking chances on the like bottom of the barrel price guys here tonight.
You might see guys like Juwan Evans and like the CJ Williams or whatever the other one is, Jameel Wilson. These guys might get traction just because it's a great matchup. They're cheap, but like, just don't really see a reason to try to go there.
Yeah, I don't either. We've talked about too many other guys in similar price range that I feel much more comfortable with.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's it for us. Let's do best points per dollar play, given the fact that there's like 40 sub 5K plays tonight.
I thought our new game was gonna be which player is gonna be a late scratch today.
Let's do that.
I don't really. It's gonna end up being like a freaking like DeAndre Jordan late scratch game or something.
Yeah.
I'm only halfway kidding.
Don't say that.
But points per dollar. Let's see. Points per dollar. This is a tough one. Torrey Craig.
Oh, I like it. Trying to find someone below 4K here. You know what? Kleber's right at 4K. Give me him tonight.
All right. You're going to get a little maxi in your life.
Do you remember, this is going back a little bit, there was a movie called Max Keebler's Big Move.
Yes.
And that's what I think about every time.
There you go.
That's it for us. You can head over to DaveFantasyCafe.com. Cheat sheets will be out later today. Brent's GPP article up on the site. And we'll catch you guys on Friday.
Good luck.